right, Sean Michael Small here. Do not be afraid. I am joined by Mr. Keaton Shaw on this rainy day, a day where traffic was not as bad as Traffic Tuesdays. It's still something that I'm always going to be curious about. I don't know how you are dealing with the weather at your homes, ladies and gentlemen, but Florida has been hit by Hurricane Ivan. It seems to be a pretty bad one. Keaton, it seems as though you were faced with some challenges. You're joining us via Zoom this morning. Did the weather have anything to do with it? It just might have in a roundabout fashion.
Well, good morning, Sean Michael Small, and good morning to all the viewers. Well, Sean, I must admit you've been rather good this week in terms of holding out and hosting the show, because once more, it's not the weather that's kept me home, actually, or has kept me back. It's the supply of water. And just as it was on Tuesday, where I had issues with WASA, it was the same thing again this morning. And the issue is that even though you have low pressure at night, for example, when I came home yesterday, there was low pressure. And I was still able to, brush my teeth, have a shower. Everything was fine. When you wake up in the morning, you have no water at all. And with this consistent dry spell, because I'm not at home during the day, and I live on my own, so I don't know what's taking place, your tanks start to run low, and you realize they're not filling up. So it's a combination of I guess, factors that are unexplainable, because, Sean, there are roughly 5 waterfalls. I say waterfalls because it's hills in which lines have burst. There are major leaks of water along the way. And one main line, one WASA main, is now spewing water in the air because of how it's burst. So I think what I'm going to have to start doing, which I should have done already, but I didn't care to pull out my phone while driving, but now I think I need to start videotaping the potholes that we face on a daily basis and the water leaks that are, I don't know, somehow we have more water in the road than in your tap.
I think, and so now this goes back, just to get into some general budget talk, some of my fears with the budget, and I guess it's some of the things that it might not have been directly mentioned, but in a way, the commentary we've been hearing about waste of time with all of the preamble, but then not a lot of details with stuff that really matters. Like, to what extent are you taking public utilities seriously with regards to the budget? Yes, there was some mention, but we have some serious problems. And like the previous budget, I do want to know, does the deficit account for all of the things we're just not spending money on? All of the maintenance we're just not doing? I don't know. Meanwhile, on the other hand, to what extent is the budget accounting for all the loans? Because I have to admit, the $1.2 billion airport, if it's financed by the Chinese loan, it's not as though we would have had that money to do other things, okay? If it is completely financed by the Chinese loan. Because I would assume that the Chinese loan having to be spent on Chinese goods was for that. But the problem, though, is with loan financing, we're seeing it now in the UK, where they try to drop taxes and financing it by loans. It seemed as though they didn't realize that you could do one, you could do the other, but kind of combining those two ideas really did not make a lot of sense to a lot of people, and confidence in that economy is going down. And I wonder to what extent when would we start to see something similar here?
Well, if you listened to the Minister of Finance in his presentation, and we all did, and quite frankly, I don't blame anybody if they didn't hear this because of how lost in translation, given the length of his preamble would have been, which probably was deliberate anyway. The budget deficit, though it's come down to such a low margin, in other words, we're able to cap it because it's just under $2 billion, it does not include loans financing that we have to repay. So that the budget deficit does not take into account loans that Trinidad and Tobago has to repay. You have to bear that in mind. So it's very, very important that we note that. So the amount of debt that Trinidad and Tobago is in right now, we don't know the total extent. The minister has stated that nominal GDP has grown and it's been the highest, I think, since 2020 or 2018 or something to that extent. And then he goes on to say that how we're doing so well compared to other Caribbean islands, but we should not be compared to other Caribbean islands all of that he mentioned in the same thing. And then very finally, he mentioned that our debt to GDP ratio has also dropped. So that is very, very interesting given the fact that we don't know the true extent of our debts and we don't know how much we have to pay and when we have to pay it back. Because if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago, I think it was either just before the COVID-19 pandemic or the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic that the minister announced that we had to take loans in order to repay loans. And quite frankly, I keep saying it's your children, it's my children, it's their children who are going to be paying for basically what's taking place right now.
I mean, debt to GDP ratio dropping. By how much? I don't remember him saying how much. Maybe I didn't hear that part and that's my fault. But technically speaking, you could drop it by an infinitesimally small amount, by 0.0000000000001%. That's a drop. He's not lying if it dropped by that much. And the thing is, nominal GDP is increasing. One of the major factors why is inflation. We just have a larger dollar value in our GDP. So now the question is, well, okay, we have inflation. Does China have equal inflation, right? Do the foreign countries where we have other loans taken out, our foreign debt, have equal inflation? Because if it doesn't, then when you factor in the exchange rates, our debt to GDP ratio is not really improving by much with those creditors. Maybe if there was local creditors, bonds, whatever, fine. But that's not accounting for the whole story. And again, I think in the UK, they're looking at a situation, the government is saying, we're going to fund government with more debt and taking less revenue from taxes. And we saw what happened there. Now, at the very least, as much as we might say that the UK's new government, there's a lot of commentary that they don't have the experience or the expertise in this sort of thing. At least our government is wise enough not to make such a bold and drastic and somewhat questionable decision on the surface. But at the same time, they have obvious things that you've been speaking about for months.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't make the statement that our government is wise enough because I'll be very honest with you. I have lost a sense of trust in the government. Honestly speaking, I would always like to give the government the benefit of the doubt because I would always hope that they're working in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago and the citizens. But because there is so much that they haven't told us and there's so much that we are unsure of, we're unaware of, then I can't say for sure that they are not doing what you just used as an example. There is a possibility that they are doing that. There's a possibility that they have done that. And quite frankly, they haven't told us. But at the end of it all, I can only hope that they are working in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago. As it relates to Liz Truss, I follow British politics. I'm not entirely a fan of Liz Truss. I'm being quite honest with you. But I wish her the best. Give her some time to see what she can do. But in this global economy where inflation rates are rising across the globe, we're seeing that central banks are having to actually increase interest rates. They're doing so, they're hesitating, but they're having to do so in order to offset the cost of inflation. But with higher interest rates, it means greater amounts to pay in terms of loans that you take. With all of that, is Trinidad and Tobago really in a position now to bargain or in a position to say that we can take these loans and that we could repay them given that the high interest rates that we're seeing across the world, and well, not necessarily high, but higher interest rates that we're seeing across the world. The other factor that we should consider, Sean, is that the Chinese yen, it's actually it's dropped to record lows against the US dollar. You know, and the US dollar is getting stronger. I think the British pound sterling yesterday grew 1% over the US dollar. But those are things that we have to be concerned about as well.
Yeah, China has its own housing crisis. Their housing industry fuels a lot of their economy, including their local government financing, not like how we would have done with property tax, but with direct land sales, apparently. And legislature has while they've, to some extent, outside of the crash of the construction market, they also have legislation that maybe unintentionally popped their local government financing bubble. So that's a whole other interesting set of developments, because we have a loan with China. What does this mean? If their currency depreciates, it might be better for us to repay the loan. I mean, we don't entirely know. We don't know what the nature of these deals are. Details are not forthcoming. We're not even entirely sure what non-energy revenue exactly means. I'm not too sure if we got a breakdown of the specifics in the budget. But let's move on. I know that, and I know we're going to have to, we don't have enough to finish it, but there was something about the current state of TSTT you wanted to get into, Keaton.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't speak about TSTT, and I mentioned this yesterday because of the ongoing situation. The ongoing situation has actually fallen on silent ears because we haven't heard much for quite some time. But I go back to a couple of months ago when we interviewed Clyde Elder on the station, and he said what the government is really trying to do is shut down TSTT as a company and move all assets and operations across to Amplia, another company which the government is now operating. Amplia formerly being Massey Communications. So I wasn't entirely sure what the point of that was, but now when I take a look at a couple of things, first of all, TSTT still hasn't been able to resolve WESN situations. Our phone lines, multiple phone lines in the office, are still down. Though that we've made contact with them innumerable times. We've tried our very best. We've kept our bills up to date. We still can't get through. So I thought, I'm wondering if this is only something that is affecting certain areas or probably just affecting WESN. Until I met with a couple individuals on the weekend who explained to me their situation. And it's more or less the same thing. One individual had to move from where they were living. So they left one place, they moved into another. And it wasn't far actually from where they originally lived. But what they wanted to do is that they wanted to change, not change rather, but reconnect their telephone line to get their landline number. So they contacted TSTT. TSTT said, okay, we'll get back to you. TSTT then called back the individual and said, well, we can't do that right now because we are transferring everything to wireless. But TSTT doesn't do wireless. So you're going to have to contact another company, Amplia. So bear in mind, TSTT has been giving WESN the runaround, saying that how we have to go to wireless. But now TSTT is telling this customer they don't do wireless. You have to move across to Amplia.
They've never told us that, yes.
Exactly. So now that this individual says, okay, fine, I'll call Amplia. Amplia, they call Amplia. Amplia says, okay, yes, we understand, so we'll get back to you. Amplia calls them back and then says, oh, I'm sorry, Amplia does not service that particular area of which you're living in, right? And that particular area that they're living in, if I may just say, just to point out how stupid it is, there are quite a few government ministers who reside within that area. In fact, the member of parliament for that area resides in that area. So Amplia is now stating that they don't service that area. And Amplia then goes on to give a list of places throughout Trinidad and Tobago of which they currently do not operate in and that they do not service. And that list was quite long. So much I can't call the entire list on air right now, but it's rather amazing that that's the case. So TSTT is trying to move across to Amplia because they don't do wireless, but Amplia is doing wireless. Yet Amplia doesn't service many parts throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Quite frankly, I don't know what the hell is going on, but this is frustrating because these are things that are not being said, are not being relayed to the public, and even WSN is suffering because we're getting a runaround. We can't get through, and it just seems as though from the onset, Amplia is a complete waste of time.
Well, Keaton, I have a thought there to respond to you, and it's going to seem pretty obvious, and it might seem like we're just repeating ourselves a lot, but we'll come to that when we come back from the break. Stay tuned, folks. This is Talking Point on WESN. Keaton Shaw, Sean Michael Small. We'll be right back.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sport?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white, and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And we just left off with Keaton explaining, well, his experiences with TSTT. That is to say, what he has uncovered after, speaking around, and the fact that not only does it seem as though we're getting a runaround here in our very own studio, we're being told, oh, we have to go wireless. Then somebody else in a different part of the country is told, yes, you could go wireless, but TSTT is not doing wireless. So that and all is an inconsistency. Is it, inefficient or inproficient workers? Well, I don't know. But then there is the fact that Amplia, if Amplia is doing the wireless, because TSTT doesn't do wireless telephones, how is it that you could make that switch when Amplia doesn't even provide service to several areas of the country, including an area where a government MP for said area resides? So we're not talking about some isolated place in the bush with 5 people, and that's why that they haven't reached there yet. We're talking about an area with a significant enough of a population, you would think, if you're going to say this company is going to handle everything to do with wireless for the country, well, major population centers will be included. To me, it's 2 things basically. There's corruption somewhere. And that explains the inefficiencies because, corruption takes money out of the system or causes the system to make less revenue than it should because you're doing favors or whatever. So because of that, you're not going to be able to hit the targets you're supposed to be able to hit. Or you're not able to move as fast as you're able to move. The other thing, which generally goes hand in hand with corruption, it seems as though, hand in hand with corruption and nepotism, will be just workers who are not good at their jobs, particularly management. The decision makers might not necessarily be qualified. To what extent is this because of state-appointed people at the very top? We've already seen the lack of ability from the board of Paria, who's, you know, the chairman has significant connections to Parliament, direct connections to Parliament. That's all I'll say about that. Why he got that job? Obviously, whatever his qualifications were, he was in a situation that was beyond his capabilities when that tragedy happened. We still haven't gotten answers about that. We still even know what's going on with the Commissioner of Inquiry, by the way. That's a whole other kettle of fish. I don't know if the union is doing enough, the Communication Workers Union, to highlight the issues if they know enough. I do wonder to what extent they are unintentionally protecting the situation because they don't necessarily want to call out the fact that some of it could be due to their employees. I don't know, because when you go with regards to people who don't have the necessary skills or ability or proficiency, you know, you do have to question down the board. The flip side is the union is not involved with management, or at least is not supposed to. PSA, Wasser, Watson Duke, former president, let's not get into that. They're not supposed to be involved in decision making of the company and strategic planning, so they're not going to be privy to those things. So who's at fault here? At the very least, the Communication Workers Union did point out the fact that he thinks that, you know, there's a unofficial restructuring going on, and how ethical that is without details is difficult to understand. But we've already seen situations, Keaton, you pointed out, where, well, the customer service and the duty of care to the customer seems to be thrown out the window. So can we assume that the duty of care to employees are being upheld? We don't know.
Well, duty of care as it relates to employees, that is a very, very interesting point. First of all, to what extent are employers now communicating with employees beyond what they are alluding to? And to what extent are employees communicating with employers to the extent that they are alluding to? That thing about communication is absolutely key. And I mean, there are, in many instances as well, and I mean, I could attest to this, there would be employees doing their work, you know, going beyond the means that they are supposed to go beyond, doing more than they actually should be doing. And at the end of the month, they're not getting paid their salary. And it seems as though the employers are not even communicating with them about that, you know. And in some instances, employees are completely confused as to what to do next. They're fearful as to if they approach management, what the wrath of management, are they going to lose their job? They're fearful that, okay, if we're not getting paid, does it mean that we're about to be made redundant or retrenched? You know, what is the situation like? No, so we understand all around the economic situation. But the mere fact that there seems to be the major issue is communication, whether it be the CPO at the bargaining table with the unions, whether it be employees within the private sector who are being absolutely unfair and treating their employees in a poor and pathetic manner due to a lack of communication. Whatever the situation may be, generally all around, that level of communication does not exist. And employees across Trinidad and Tobago right now are very fearful. And I think there's going to come a point, Sean, where they're no longer going to do what is being asked of them. They're only going to do what is required of them and what was their original purpose on their job. They're no longer going to continue going beyond their means or doing what they... And people might say that's not the case in every organization or institution, and you're probably right. Not all employees go beyond their means, go beyond what they're supposed to do. But the instances where that may be the case, you're going to start seeing a lot more employees they're going to start becoming they're going to start defending themselves and standing up for themselves a bit more. And you can't blame them.
I don't know. The problem is the job market is not really conducive to that right now. When was it Caribbean Cruise Lines or Disney Cruise Lines? I can't remember, but the cruise lines was looking to hire workers. The lines they seemed longer than the available positions. Let's put it that way. And it was not something that it took a while for people to start to participate in. It was, there seems to be the immediacy there. People rush to try and get those jobs. And we're not talking about some ridiculously high-paying once-in-a-lifetime job. I mean, the job isn't a bad job on a cruise ship. It's demanding work. It's a well-paying job, but demanding work. It's a different type of lifestyle. People, usually those sorts of unconventional factors give people a pause, but enough people were willing to say, I don't care about that. I want to try and get something better than what I have now, or I have nothing right now and I need something. And I think therein lies the question, is there enough opportunities in our job market for people to leave their employer to find something else, even if they have to jump industries? And I think one of the issues is the government's labor practices or hiring practices has caused, in the short run, it looked like a band-aid to a problem. We need more jobs. So what do? We stick more people in the port. We stick more people in Warsaw. We stick more people wherever we could find spots for them, right? We bloat everything. At first, it doesn't seem bad. But then eventually, well, it's not sustainable. You could only put so many extra bodies in an entity before it becomes completely ridiculous, right? And you're not actually causing the economy to see any benefits, to see any actual growth in the economy from the organic growth in jobs. You're basically force stuffing people in. So the long-term solution is not, there's none, right? So now we're in a situation where not only do we have the private sector employees under strain because of what they're going through, technically speaking, with all other considerations just off the table for the moment, to get certain public entities healthy, you need to retrench people. That is potentially the situation that these entities face that they might not have any alternative to. And if those two scenarios kind of meet in the middle, the outcome for labor in the country is going to be quite ugly. And I don't know how long it'll take to recover.
Let me be quite honest with you, Sean. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying that I disagree with what you're saying, that in order to make some of these services more efficient, and in order to start making them profitable, you need to actually remove some of the dead weight, the bloated wage bills and employee roster.
They also can't afford the extra bodies that add nothing.
So we completely understand that. But the same way that you made that point about the job market does not necessarily allow for employees to really take action out of fear of losing their jobs. You can flip that around.
Yeah.
Employers know that the job market right now is terrible. Employers know that it's very difficult for individuals. I mean, graduates is one thing, but individuals who have experience and the qualifications, they can't get a job. So employers are very much well aware of that. And I think to a certain extent, they may use that to their advantage. Because employers are aware of that, employers will take advantage of employees. Employers are going to tell employees, well, listen, you have to do this. You don't have a choice. This was not what we agreed to when you first came here, but you're going to have to do this. We understand what the situation is, and we appreciate your assistance and we appreciate your help, but we're not going to pay you anymore. And you don't have a choice but to do this. And if the employee does not do that, there is fear. There is fear that, listen, they're either going to be picked on within the workplace. The employer is probably going to speak about them behind their back, or it's mentally going to affect them in some way or the other, because that's the power of an employer. And employees are left defenseless. So it's a very difficult situation. So as much as I hear your point, and I agree with your point, you must also flip it around and say that in this day and age, employers know that they can take advantage of employees, and there may not be any repercussions to it.
Well, the thing is, I actually think we could, those two things go hand in hand, right? But I also think that we have to look at the situation now with the unions. In a situation where the labor market might have less leverage than we've seen in quite some time, because the economy is what it is, and you cannot squeeze any more money out of it, right? And the private sector right now, due to COVID, etc., also has their strain. So with the labor market so weak, and with the fact that, you know, they've basically been trying to stall restructuring for multiple entities for the last 2 to 7 years. Let's more or less call it how it is. I don't understand these hard and fast lines that the unions are taking. It didn't work for Petrotrin, right? Maybe Petrotrin, the example was enough to scare off the government from being aggressive with other entities just as quickly. But Petrotrin took 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Now we come to the budget and same union leader, up to the same old tricks again. Back to your point about communication with regards to TSDT. I see poor communication here because on one hand he's saying, well, this budget means more pressure for poor people. But on the other hand he's saying that the fuel increase, if you're going to do that, that just shows why we needed our public sector workers to get more than 4%. My thing is, that will leave the private sector workers bearing the load. If he wants compensation for what the government's decisions are, I think it's fair for everybody to just share a little bit of the load with the price of gas going up. We share a little bit on, as opposed to the private sector workers now, who to some extent have less leverage because politically they don't have the same voice as the public sector unions. They have less leverage. They're not going to get any sort of increases to their salaries to try to compensate for this fuel price increase. So I wonder to what extent now is the unions, when will private sector workers realize, hey, they want to cry to you and talk about the poor man, but they don't mean all of you. They just mean their members. And when is the actual negotiations? Because I don't think there's any negotiations here. I just think it's politics on both sides. When will we get actual negotiations and communications? Because the situation is not getting any better. And like I said last year, do we have any sort of reserve in case we see any more external catastrophes? I didn't expect a war in Ukraine, but it happened. So who knows what else could happen? And who knows what else is going to happen to the labor market because of it?
Well, yes, you're right. A lot of factors are unexpected. And I think we agree that many a times the union's demands are unrealistic. My major issue with the union, Sean, is that with all these comments that they make, with all the avenues and angles of which they try to turn to make their argument, I have no problem with that. But any good argument, you're supposed to bring evidence. You're supposed to bring something that shows me what you're saying is absolutely truthful. I can't just be, because if you go out on a limb and make some of these wild comments and in instances accusations, I think we're hearing now from GTM that the special branch is being used, to basically bully teachers, right? All of these instances, I would appreciate some level of testimony or some level of evidence which suggests that it is true. And I can't just go for word of mouth, because you can't necessarily believe anybody by word of mouth now. It's very sad and unfortunate, but that's just the state of play that we're in. And yes, even though the unions can be unreasonable at times, they're not far different from the government by making these very, very weird statements, very peculiar statements, whilst never giving anything solid to back it up. So basically what you have are two individuals of, put it this way, they're of the same kind, probably just wearing different cloaks, who are arguing and battling against one another. So I look forward to see what's next, but the Minister of Finance in his budget indicated that we're not moving beyond this 4%. Leroy Batiste, the president of the PSA, said the figures that Colm Imbert called were totally bloated and inaccurate. In fact, I would rather sign an agreement for those figures than what the unions are asking for. And then we're hearing now from JTM and Ansel Roger as it relates to tutor negotiations. So it's going to continue to take twists and turns, but the government has remained firm and the unions are still making statements that I'm not too sure what to believe.
Well, I mean, let's just remember, while it was classrooms at home, you could argue that teaching performance over the pandemic How good was it to justify demands for more wages? How good is the performance of public sector workers across the board in general, not specific individuals who you might know of who's keeping the system running? How good is the overall general performance of public sector workers? Does it justify these wage increases? Because are we even getting a minimum reasonable level of performance, right? We're not even talking about, well, it's good enough. Are we even getting good enough? I don't know anybody who would say that we are. And at the end of the day, if you're a private worker, what will you do? Would you strike? No, you would look to find another job. But they're holding on to these jobs as though they're winning lottery tickets, and I wonder why.
Yeah, well, as I said, there are no other jobs to look for. And employers know that, so they will always take advantage of employees.
That is now. That is now. That is now, but...
Sorry, in this current climate, I dare a public service employee, a public sector employee, to work for the salaries that are being earned in the private sector right now.
I mean, exactly. So again, do we really care about the little man? Because the private sector worker ain't getting this voice. But that's now. What about when Petrotrin was going to be dissolved because it was bloated? We weren't in this much of a problem then. But did they care? No, they wanted to keep their winning lottery tickets of working for Petrotrin. Your high-paying jobs where you will always have a union to advocate for you to get further raises. Maybe not all public sector workers have that enjoyment, but we have to leave it there. We do have a guest coming in, a member of the TTPS Community Police Unit. We'll be speaking about an interesting aspect of our crime situation in the country. When we return, this is Talking Point at WESN. We'll be right back.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. only on WESN Content Capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc, Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law. and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy, there will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your content capital, WESN.
And we are joined today by a different member of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. He is a member of the Community-Oriented Policing Section, or COPS. And he's here with us today to speak about, well, maybe something that not everybody wants to consider. We don't want to necessarily judge anybody about it, but it's a talk about parenting and all of the various aspects that for the various decisions or factors around parenting of kids that could lead to them either being manipulated into a life of crime or potentially seeking out a life of crime. And it starts from the home, and it could start very small. No pun intended, because, like myself, Sergeant J.C. Small, well, it's interesting, sir, to meet you. Good morning.
Listen, morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Good morning, Sergeant Small.
So, as someone who has the same name, I'm going to not even pretend to appreciate any jokes around the word small. We'll just cut straight to the chase. It's something that a lot of the nation might actually be sensitive about, because it's almost like you're questioning them. But with regards to parenting, especially in the last high-profile violent crime where we saw the parents, for once, not speak out in defense of their children, oh, they were good boys and we don't understand and they're not criminals. I mean, maybe because the evidence was too obvious. But they did come out to say they condemned the actions of their sons. They did not approve of the criminal activity. But unfortunately, this is when it's too late. What has your unit and the TPS been seeing with regards to parenting and children and I mean, I know you know of the various ways that kids get caught up, whether intentionally or unintentionally. What are you seeing now with parents and their reaction to the challenges?
Well, I think parents at this stage crying out for help. I mean, when they go to the schools on a daily basis, one of the main responsibilities of the officers of the community-oriented policing section is that we do school visits daily. We do a lot of case conference with the members of staff, including the student support services of the Ministry of Education, which comprise of the social workers, the school guidance officers. Sometimes when these children act out in school, and they breach the discipline code of conduct, and the parents come in, some of the parents really shocked by the children's behavior, because the way that they behave in school is not the same behavior that the parents see at home. So parents really crying out for help. And I just want to say, at this present time, because of the need to really help parents strengthen their parenting skills, we have partnered recently with the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, and we have an ongoing parenting workshop at this time. As a matter of fact, today at our Homework and Resource Center located at Chrissy Terrace, Lendo Village, Shoguanas, we will be engaging parents there. Families in Action will be there. They partnering. They are implementing the program, but it's a partnership with Social Development and the Community Police. Now, this program is going to be rolled out also in the Northern Division at the St. Joseph Police Youth Club, and also in the Southern Division at the Whiteland Police Youth Club, where we really basically teach them the different push and pull in terms of children wanting to feel a sense of belonging, wanting the attention, and acting out because of certain scenarios. And you know, as we talk about parenting, it's really important to identify the root causes as to why, the origins are why people probably behave a particular way. And if it is, you consider that and they go straight to the household, they see some of the things in the household, like probably the parents separated, or they're not having a good co-parenting relationship. These are things that tend to affect children in some manner. And then they reach out. I mean, there's the social media, which is like a real issue in these current times, especially in the pandemic, where children go in and talking to strangers. So we always encourage them to do the right thing in terms of not engaging with strangers, not, you know, being obedient in terms of what the parents asking them to do in terms of the rules of the house. So it's important to set rules and guidelines, and for these children to understand what is required of them as children.
Well, let's go with something you just said with regards to the social media, and I never necessarily considered the fact that yes, it's very easy to contact strangers. I didn't necessarily have it as a child, so me as an adult meeting strangers in various chat rooms or whatever off of common interests, I don't necessarily think about that possibility. And if I don't think about it, maybe parents don't necessarily think about it either. Is that a growing concern? Has that been a major concern for a while? Because, I mean, they existed before the pandemic. But has it gotten out of control now? Do we have the mechanisms to even properly deal with that if it comes to it from a law enforcement's perspective, if parenting is not able to keep up with it?
Well, definitely in terms of social media. I remember a lot of these children been using devices, and even in they playing their video games, you have a lot of different cyber predators, I call them, seeking out these children, trying to groom them, trying to make arrangements for them to meet. I heard of numerous stories where, and the parents just probably naive or just, I mean, it's real important, even if your children using devices, to check and go through thoroughly the devices. Probably get somebody, probably in your workplace, somebody from IT, somebody who go to computers to block certain sites and, you know, debar children from being the victims of, you know, I don't want to say cybercrime alone, but definitely sexual grooming and these other offenses under the sexual offenses, like where persons can be arrested. But instead of they becoming easy victims, it's really important to educate them as parents, one, and then it's important for you to have full knowledge of what they're engaging in on social media. As a matter of fact, children, I believe, from a certain age shouldn't be on social media. But the parents must monitor them closely. And even if it is allowing them to be on social media, you have to have the password, you have to go through the devices, because you just might be surprised the kind of conversations they have, you know, who trying to engage them in these conversations, who they're trying to follow. You know, there's a lot of things happening. So much influence on social media that you found children within the pandemic probably smoking, probably making videos of themselves, and it's persons who learn them into these type of behaviors. So we have to educate parents, educate the children about the dangers of engaging in these behaviors in terms of when you consider human trafficking and other aspects of crime, you will be saving them in the long run. So it's really important to pay attention to that social media. It's not like a long time when we didn't have social media and didn't have that type of influence coming in like a flood, but now it's a different atmosphere, it's a different era, and we must pay particular attention.
Well, I mean, the obvious thing now, because we've had it for a while, maybe the pandemic accelerated things because getting devices and getting kids online was a requirement for school. But also with regards to the parents' ability to monitor them, it was one thing when we were in lockdown and, you know, some adults couldn't even work. So yeah, you have a reasonable amount of time. As the economy opened back up and there's economic pressure to be working to earn as much, I can't imagine what parents are doing now to try to keep the family afloat. Is there any concern that the stresses are compounding it, making it more difficult for the parents to monitor the kids? And Keaton, I don't know if you want to add something to that.
No, well, I'll let the sergeant answer your question, then I'll ask.
Well, I mean, in terms of monitoring and parents, I mean, children must be supervised. I mean, it's an offense to leave them unsupervised in terms of leaving them home alone under the age of 18, that would be bordering on a form of neglect, which you could be arrested for. Persons have been arrested for this. So it's important that whoever you're leaving to supervise the child, whether it's somebody whether it's a daycare or whether it's some relative, is important for that person or even the parents to check in on them, to always follow up on the activities they engage in on social media. It really, really critical. So even if the parents, they're working, parents always on the go, busy doing stuff, but it's really important to take the time to safeguard your child and also talk to them all the time, reason with them, let them know, the dangers, how people out there like predators, they want to destroy them, they want to harm them, they want to, traffic them in terms of human trafficking. So it's important for children because sometimes they too as children real naive, they're not aware of the dangers, so they just go about casually thinking everything is all right. But that is where and not only the parents, everybody must play their role, the teachers, the guardians, the parents, everybody who in that child's life, long time they say it takes a village to raise a child. You see your neighbor child, your child, even friends, the children friends. Sometimes these children acting out in school and the friends seeing certain signs in their behavior and nobody saying anything. Nobody talking to the guidance officer, nobody talking to the social worker, the school social worker and guidance officers always doing sessions with them in terms of educating them. But we have to really promote them. If you see something, say something. If it is you see, any type of behavior that's not normal, the incident in South, some of the parents saying they're not aware, but somebody would have been aware that these young men, the ones whose parents admit that they were not aware of what was taking place in their life. Yes. Some friend might have known, some neighbor might have known, they might have seen something, the hours they're moving, whether they're going out late in the night, you had to account for your actions, and parents had to call the children to account in terms of the behavior. And it could be adults too. I just say when it is they detect, because the young men, they were all over 18, but their parents, their children to some parents. But it's important, no matter how you see people acting out or behaving a particular way, or they're moving secretive and they're hiding, it's important for somebody to kind of pay some kind of surveillance to find out what's happening.
Sergeant Small, whilst we could appreciate the efforts of the TTPS, for example, you mentioned that you'll be at the Homework Centre in Landoville, Chagonas later today, the St. Joseph Police Youth Club, and you mentioned another youth club, I can't remember the name at the top of my head.
Whitecamp Police Youth Club, yeah.
Right. And you said you will be engaging with parents, and even instances where you guys make yourself available to the media, such as you're doing it right now. That's excellent in terms of information and education. But I fear that the TTPS will need to take a step further for more engagements. And I'm wondering if there's any plans to go directly into schools to have conversations with students, the student population within schools, and have an education drive there beyond just a police youth club, and whether or not the TTPS will also be getting involved in PTA meetings.
Well, I just want to say, I came into the community policing section in Central Division in 2016, and even prior to that, the police been in the schools actively engaging the school population. In 2017, we established, myself and Rondell Fields, the president of the Fathers Association, established the Education Multi-Sector Committee. And that committee was really to look at some of the behavioral issues we're observing in the school in terms of gang violence, the use of drugs or substance abuse, sexual misconduct. And we look at all those different activities that are happening, and we engage different stakeholders like the prisons. So we had the prison mentorship team who came into the schools with us, and the young men, some of them were on murder charges, some of them were students in schools, but they didn't resolve a conflict peacefully, and it resulted into one killing the other, and they're in the jail now, and they're talking about the experience. Had they done things differently, they would be free today. So we had the prisons, we had the US Embassy, the legal advisory unit, because when you arrest a juvenile, the protocol is that you must contact duty counsel attorneys under the legal aid and advisory unit, and there's a protocol under the Children's Act and even the judge's rules for children, which is a safeguard to protect the child and to protect the officer, the law enforcement officer who engages the child if they commit a breach of the law. Right? So it's a number of stakeholders. We established a movement and started the Student Empowerment Peace Over Violence Caravan. We did it in all the schools that were deemed high risk at that time in the Central Division. And throughout Trinidad and Tobago, we have, even in Sangre Grande, we have the Sangre Grande Police Youth Club location being a location where we have children with extreme behavioral issues. Even the judicial system, the court system send them there also to do engage in one-on-one programs. To be honest, We have a wealth of programs. We have our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Victim and Witness Support Unit involved. As a matter of fact, today in the Carpetchama West Secondary, we have Futsal 868 partnered with us. Last term, we started a sports program in the schools to engage the children through sports mentorship. We have the police sports club also involved in this activity. We engage parents in the PTA meetings. We do school visits daily. So all the issues that come up in the schools, we try to be proactive in terms of engaging the parents, doing home visits, and really encouraging people to behave the right way. And not only that, but bring other organizations. For example, we bring Rapport, they do drama and skits and arts and so on, showing children the importance of making good decisions in terms of sexual misconduct. We have our drug user, SIU unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service who come and do displays in terms of showing the children the dangers of the different drugs and not to get caught up in a life of crime and gang activities and so on. So we work with a number of wealth of stakeholders, with the police leading in the front, and working in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, the Student Support Services, the safety officers, even the MTS security work together with us to be proactive about our activities in the school.
Well, Sergeant Small, unfortunately we are out of time, but I promise you we will continue the conversation on this show, and maybe we could have you back on a later date, both to get some updates as well as to get more information. I know you left us with some information as well that you messaged me this morning. We will share that with the public, but we have to break for news on the hour, so I want to thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. Have a good day.
All right, folks.
Thank you.
That was Sergeant Small of the Community-Oriented Policing Service, or I think I messed it up. But he's a member of COPS. They're the community police, and it's an important role in this day and age. But we have to break for news on the hour. When we return, we'll continue conversations and hear from you, the viewers. We'll be right back.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Education Minister lays out plans for budget allocations. Businessman disappointed that Forex availability not being addressed. Chamber accuses government of non-consultation with private sector. And internationally, cities flooded and power cut as storm crosses Florida. Now for the details. Education Minister Dr. Nian Gatsby-Dolly has sought to explain what the recent budget allocation would be used for within the ministry. Education was allocated a sum of $7.453 billion for the next fiscal year. The minister spoke with state media on Wednesday.
The main projects have already been planned and are being implemented. So the allocation will be used to further fund the progress of these projects over the next year. A main thing is the supply of more digital devices to the schools. What would have happened in 2020 with the closure of schools? A lot of the devices that were lodged at the schools that would have been a part of the e-testing program, they were distributed from secondary schools into primary schools to teachers and so. So we now have to replace that bulk of computers, and we have been given the allocation in this year's budget to do that.
The minister also weighed in on the tutor impasse and the injunction recently filed.
I don't think we are not understanding the fact that the negotiations, everybody has a position with respect to the negotiations, but there are reasons why teachers are classed as essential workers. And so therefore, the action that was taken really is just a part of the law. And that was all that was happened. The law was enforced. And as we go forward, we look forward to the amicable resolution of this situation. In negotiation periods, these things are par for the course. And so we look forward to this being resolved.
The Vice Chairman of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers, Ricardo Mohammed, is disappointed that there is no clear approach to generating foreign exchange from the non-energy sector was announced by the Minister of Finance. Mr. Mohammed notes that local businesses are suffering from capital flight and the situation needs to be addressed.
In Trinidad, however, we have a steady erosion of our foreign currency, and we still face global supply chain bottlenecks, and a lot of businesses are still facing a lot of capital risk. So we would have liked to see a little more emphasis placed on how are we going to earn additional revenue outside of the oil and gas sector.
Meanwhile, the co-coordinator of the chamber, Jai Lildar Singh, has criticized the approach of government toward the private sector. He says the chamber made submissions to the minister which were not addressed, and the private sector is not given a seat at the table.
The biggest problem in Trinidad and Tobago, and has not been addressed by the minister or by any other of those in leadership, is business confidence. That is an absolute critical issue. The private sector is not being invited to the table when policies are being devised that could enable the private sector. We are getting a type of pat on the head and saying, private sector, be a good boy, we know what is good for you, take this, this is good for you, without an input from the private sector. Despite the budget submissions, nothing that was submitted by the Confederation of Chambers was accepted.
On to international news now. One of the most dangerous storms to hit the U.S. in years has left 2.4 million homes and businesses in Florida without power and floodwaters surging inland. Hurricane Ian made landfall on Wednesday, smashing into the coast with wind speeds of up to 241 kilometers per hour. Dramatic scenes saw a hospital roof blown off, cars submerged, and trees ripped out of the ground. The Category 4 hurricane was later downgraded to a tropical storm. Well, that was your news of the hour on WESN. I'm Denise Sinclair. Thanks for watching.
Come travel with us as we explore Diwali across the globe. Diwali is celebrated in many countries worldwide, but do you know the traditions and practices of each nation? From Guyana to Australia, WESN presents Diwali Passport, October 3rd to October 23rd, with replays on October 24th. It's Diwali Passport, a WESN exclusive.
Welcome back to Talking Points, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, who would have questioned the dedication of our TTPS members that have appeared on Talking Point? Because like ASP Ali, Sergeant Small of the Community-Oriented Policing Section, he has volunteered to stay on for calls as well as to continue the conversation a little bit. And one of the things that I actually did want to talk about, or at least definitely wanted to highlight, you have the Community-Oriented Policing Section. They do have a list of parenting tips, some of which I think is quite important for parents to, well, at least consider. A lot of parents might be a bit too old school, but some of the tips on this list, the first on the list, treat your child with respect. The fifth on the list, foster your child's independence. The sixth on your list, avoid harsh discipline. That's not to say that you're throwing the children out to the wolves, but it's a balancing act, and you don't, I think you mentioned it before, you don't want your children to come down too hard on them and for them to have any negative reactions to your parenting style from being too harsh. Sergeant Small? If you would care to comment. I think you're muted. You're still muted, Sergeant.
Sergeant Small, your microphone is...
You need to unmute Zoom.
Yes. These safety tips are so important, and that is why we saw it important really. I mean, community policing is really proactive policing, so we don't want to wait to see something happen to be able to, guide people and to help people and to work with in partnership with stakeholders. So these tips are so valuable. I'm happy that you share it, and you all can Trinidad and Tobago can go tune into our community police Central Division Facebook page, where you will see the wealth of activities we've been doing over the years and continue to do. Even our mainstream Trinidad and Tobago Police Service page, they share a lot of the positive work of the police in terms of proactive policing and how we really trying our best to work proactively with the youths and the communities of Trinidad and Tobago. As we speak, we have some ongoing training, even with the gang reduction and community empowerment training, and that training is focused on two core aspects of policing: intelligence-led policing and community policing, of course. And it really, teaches the importance of identifying root causes to why people commit crimes or why people behave a particular way, and even more so, why children feel that they want to join a gang or want to join a violent extremist groups. And we have the remedies right here in Trinidad and Tobago. I am an alumni of the International Visitors Leadership Program, exchange program, where I went to the US in terms of Washington and Detroit, and the focus was on countering violent extremism. And when you look at all the first world countries, what they're doing to reduce crime and violence and gang activities and violent extremism is in what we do in Trinidad and Tobago. They look to sports in terms of empowering children, mentoring them through sports, through the arts, through culture. When children find their niche or in terms of God-given talent and they nurture it, they tend to excel. I could refer to many athletes like my good friend Kenman Jones. He's now the national captain of the women's football team. We have so many other young persons, even within the central division here, who really veered towards sports. They may not have been, all of them may not have been flawless academically, but they probably went into tech vocational areas where they really excel. And we have to really learn to help our children identify their true passion in terms of what they want to do in life, and push them. Whether it's business and all too, at a very early age, we just finished our sustainable hydroponics agriculture program for young entrepreneurs, SHAPE, and that was a program that really geared towards teaching people in the community, children, youths, the value of agriculture, food sustainability. We partnered with International Organization for Migration, funded by the European Union, and we're really working proactively with communities in terms of, we just finished our weaving, braiding, and barbering program, and it's just about teaching people to fish so that they really would be idle. When it is the idle, they will end up on the block, they go sell weed, they go do all kinds of illegal things, and it's more stress. Why not sell ginger and tomato and bygone and all these things that could give you real income without you having to go and pay attorney fees and attend court and get a bad character? It's really important to partner with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. We have a wealth of youth clubs in the whole country. Must be over 100 police youth clubs with over 7,000 members, and we are committed to really working with the young people and stakeholders of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, folks, the phone lines are open. The number should be up on your screen. Call in if you have any questions you might want to ask Sergeant Small about some of the advice that he's given, or some of the opportunities or workshops or talks that they give. If you have any questions with regards to your own kids or your grandkids, or you could, of course, call in for any other topic that you want to speak about. Of course, the budget or post-budget analysis is still going to be ongoing. But we do have a caller on the line from Tobago. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Morning. I sat here and I listened to Mr. Small, and he is saying to us, right, that he has so much problem in communication with ICNTT and all that. Small, that is something we have in Tobago here all the time, and the difference with you and me is that you don't have to pay any money by sea or air to get your problems resolved. So we actually just having that problem 20 and 30 years ago, and nobody seeks to resolve it. What happened a lot, like when Trinidadians come to Tobago to live, to experience the problem that is a norm. and they don't understand the kind of problems that we are having. We don't have the institutions, and government come and government go. There is neglect to put down the facilities here. So we could have imagine,
well, caller,
yeah.
I might have to ask to end it there because we do have another call on the line. But I hear you and I understand because I have family even now living in Tobago, lived in Tobago the last 20 years. Trust me, I understand. As much as we could talk about our problems with TSCT, it's not our problems in the studio are not any closer to being resolved either, however. But we do have a caller from Pitty Valley. Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Hi, morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Sean and Keaton and
Hey,
Sergeant.
hey! Good morning. Good morning.
I couldn't get in yesterday to congratulate you all on your 2 years anniversary. Hello?
Yes, you're there.
Yeah, on your 2 years anniversary, I want to wish you all the best and all the best of health and strength in your endeavor. I was there with you all from the beginning. We had ups and downs, no malice, just difference in opinion. I really called, but I'll call back tomorrow and talk about this. I wanted to talk about the Sandy Grande Regional Corporation and the budget, but Mr. Small showed me up this morning. I would like to talk about him this morning with the good job the police is doing to tackling that sort of the crime we have in the country, not just about the robberies and the murders and stuff like that, but this part they are tackling it, and I think it is very good from the homes and the children. And I want to thank Mr. Small there for the good job they are doing. Plenty things he said there I didn't even know. They are doing a lot. And tomorrow I'll talk about the more political side, about the budget and the Sandy Grande Regional Corporation. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, caller. I mean, I'm just grateful we got 2 calls from you in 1 week. Sergeant Small.
Good to every people from Pitty Valley, by the way. Thank you for your congratulations sentiments.
So, Sergeant Small, it seems that we have at least informed people about what is available, what's being done. One of the minor issues we have in our society, people don't even know what's available to help them. We do have a caller from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Caller, you're on the air.
Hi. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, morning.
Good morning.
To the officer as well. Good morning to you, sir. I really appreciate the job that you're doing, and those same comments that Pilivali made, I also like to extend that to him as well. It's really needed now because of the youths and the way they are being led astray all about. They really need somebody to bring them back to the reality of life and what's correct. But the whole thing about parenting children do lead by example. What their parents do, they more or less will follow. So you have to have good parents in the first place and try to guide them correctly and show them the right and wrong. It's not a hard thing to do, but the main thing is living by example as parents. If you live by example and do the right things, the children will follow and you will follow in your footsteps. But what he is doing here is excellent because there are a lot of children just with one parent, and that is one of the problems they have in the country, and they need the guidance. So to you, officer, I extend my congratulations to you in that field. I also glad to hear my friend from Pitty Valley call back, and I hope he continues because I always entertain his topics and so on. We don't live far apart on each other. So you guys have a good morning, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, caller. We have another caller from Mr. Gornas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Professor.
This morning Express, Shamfa Kujo berate some citizens for wanting everything for nothing, forgetting who created this gibby syndrome. MPs and councillors who before independence were not paid salaries, they only get an allowance and refreshment, are now entitled to some of the biggest salaries, and they are tax-free. Again, the reason they didn't get salaries is because they were expected to be people who were successful in life and wanted to give back something, so they didn't need salaries. Even when the MPs started to get a salary, they were given a 20% gratuity because they were not entitled to pension, which is a normal thing to public servants who are not entitled to pension. However, they decided to give themselves pensions. And whereas some public servants have to work 33 and 30 years to get a full pension, they only have to work 15 years. They also get as much as they could eat and drink free. And Mrs. Cujo is surprised at citizens for following their leader's example. And as regards your guest, I mean, I don't have time to go into all the things I told his predecessor of how you deal with crime and gangs. But you could go back in your archives and show him.
Yes.
And bear in mind, I am not saying the police alone have to do it. It is the government have to attack law and order, in which all the laws have to be enforced, and the environment is what creates crime. And bear in mind what I said about East Dry River, Bayshore in San Fernando, the squatting on the train line, and things these were done by politicians of this country. And if we don't deal with these things, we only spin and top in mud. Any questions before I leave this morning, gentlemen? Or as usual?
I don't have any. I actually agree with more or less everything that you said, and it actually ties into one of the parenting tips that we have on the list. But we do have another caller, so I don't want to get into it. I'll mention it afterwards towards the end of the show, Professor. Thank you. We do have a caller from Mayaro. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, you're on here.
Okay, good morning, gentlemen. And I love to hear the name. This is a great day to have a good day. It's too small, so too small make a big, and that's Keaton. So hear what? Officer, I want to comment here because you touch a base on my playing field, which is agriculture. Officer, listen to me. You know to a fact that anytime you come from jail or prison or confined areas in life or society, the fastest thing is to run to agriculture. I have plenty of them in my area, in my arrow. And they come to me, and when I try to help, the same police will chastise them in many ways because you want to make sure they go forward. But we have to go more in depth because these fellas have no sense of direction. They will do the program, they will try it out, and they will leave it because the people in the community is not supporting the act of giving them the opportunity to be citizen. And that is what I face in because they will tell me, well, I'm trying and I'm failing because these people not supporting and buying the goods or helping them to sell the produce or giving them a direction of market or price. So they always believe that the thief or the stealing stuff. So we have to promote the idea and deploy it properly in society where we live. We come Mayaro, we will leave from Mayaro and go in town and do crime. But we will say tongue is the problem, but it is generally at the concept we have to understand to reach the people in the community who is willing to help and support the arm of the TTPS. I thank you for this opportunity and continue with a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, caller. We have another caller from Diego Martin.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks.
Hi,
Good morning.
morning.
I don't know if I could say this in 1 minute. Sean, government and wise, that's an oxymoron. Keaton,
Well,
I'm also a Liz Trust fan. Yes, Sean, oh gosh, look it up now.
No, I didn't say wise. I said wise enough. I said
teenager and logic.
caller. I said wise enough. It just means they're wiser than the other guy. That's all.
Okay. Come, yeah. I just want to talk about Ian, right? So Ian was the first.
I can't hear the call. I'm sorry.
It was projected to hit Tampa, but you see what happened there. For the first time in 100 years, it was going to hit Tampa, but instead it went further south.
Yes, that's
to Fort
yes.
Myers at 155, which kind of borders a Category 5, right? So of course, the people were forced to evacuate, at least urged, but a lot of them, myself included, we are always quick to say, oh gosh, why didn't they? Some people are stubborn, and they said, well, they've weathered 20 storms already, but they didn't realize this is not your father's and your grandfather's storm, because the oceans are warmer because of humans, cars, traffic jams, Keaton and Sean, planes, factories, coal, oil, natural gas, emitting the CO2, warming the oceans, and intensifying the storm. Then there are people who cannot afford.
Hello, caller? We lost the call. We lost the call. I don't know if we're going to have enough time for you to call in to continue. But I guess I think, you know, or I suspect I know where you're headed with regards to the environment. It's one of the things that, should we be doing more in TNT? Probably. Are we doing the right things that we need to be doing? The easiest things that we could do to help with the environment? I don't even know if we're doing that. But hopefully we won't have to suffer serious consequences because of it. But who knows? With regards to the weather, some people think they know. We don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day. This is new territory for human history. That's my take on it. Sergeant Small, yes. Apparently you and I, with our powers combined, we make an entire Keaton show. But I'd like to thank you, Mr. Big. I'd like to thank you for coming in and sharing with us. And there's more to this to talk about, more with regards to parenting and the stress of parenting. I don't think we have enough time to get into the discussion any further. But go ahead, Keaton.
Now, I just wanted to actually, express some of the sentiments of what the caller from Digger Martin and Fatigue Valley said. Sergeant Small, I want to thank you and the TTPS for the service that you all are doing, especially in these areas. I mean, often enough, we cry that the TTPS isn't doing enough, but in terms of education and information, stuff available this morning, to the extent that you did, relaying to us that information, and even, through the police youth clubs, interacting with parents, homework centers. I think that's excellent, and I hope that this continues. I know you have a lot of stakeholders involved. I hope we could expand on this because it's much needed. So I really champion this, and I thank you guys. Yeah,
but I mean, at least from where I sit, the community unit could do all of these things, and it might be all for naught if the rest of us don't keep up our end of the bargain. Sergeant Small, would you agree?
Yes, definitely. We need all hands on deck. We really need parents to come out and support. Don't just drop your children to the police youth club activities and just come and pick them back up. Support your children, be involved with what they're doing, motivate them, and let us all work together. Today, Tuesday, we have the Christie Terrace Homework Center. We're there Thursday again, and we're there for the next 3 weeks. I want to thank the parents who come out so far, and I want to encourage more parents. Let me follow up Christie Terrace this evening. All the schools, all the PTAs, the presidents in the PTA, come and get the information and take it back to your membership. You're asking for help. We're being proactive about helping you with stakeholders from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, but we need you all to come up. We walk door to door almost to invite people to this, and we're going to continue encouraging you to work with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Well, folks, that is Sergeant Small of the Community-Oriented Policing Section. And I mean, we have heard, in fact, from one of our callers, one of the consequences of your children falling into the life of crime. Even if they survive, their lives would be significantly impacted from then on. Why take the risk? Do what needs to be done. If you can't handle it on your own, the Community-Oriented Policing Section is there to help advise you and even give you some of that help that you might need. With that said, however, despite the weather, Mr. Keaton Shah, give the people some hope, please.
Well, first of all, yes, work with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Thank you very much, Sergeant Small. And Sean Small in the studio, thank you very much once more. I'm so happy that even though there's so many pressing things across Trinidad and Tobago, like the fact that I have to figure out whether or not I have enough water just now. Thank you very much to everybody. And today, indeed, regardless of whether there's sun or rain, we can make it a good day. Today is a good day to have a great day.
And with that, folks, we bid you adieu until tomorrow, stay tuned, Strictly Legal at 10 a.m. Within half an hour, and more local content on WESN, the home of Content Capital. We'll see you tomorrow on Talking Point. Bye-bye.
WESN